Are you worried that your current Clash Royale deck sucks and you may never get 9,000 trophies with it? Don't worry, because I have the perfect solution. In this video, I'm going to showcase the best deck and tips for every arena in Clash Royale, recommended by pros. These decks and tips will help you fulfill your goal of getting 9,000 trophies in Clash Royale. Let's start. The best Arena 1 deck we have is this Giant Musketeer deck. You don't really have a lot of card options in Arena 1, so most players will be using the exact same deck. Although, using the Goblin Cage over the Goblin Hut will give you an advantage. It's more versatile and spell-resistant, meaning Fireball won't provide value against it. The Goblin Cage is great to counter Giant and Mini P.E.K.K.A. For offense, make sure to space out your troops and keep your arrows handy for any swarms. Always split your archers and minions to defend both lanes and avoid giving spell value to the opponent. Moving on to Arena 2, you unlock some really useful cards. The best deck for Arena 2 is this Giant Bomber deck. The Bomber is the new addition to this deck from Arena 1 and is quite useful. You can use the Bomber to take care of swarms or even defend cards like Musketeer or Goblin Brawler. Additionally, the Bomber can help on offense against a Tombstone, which is a really popular card in Arena 1. Mini P.E.K.K.A. will be your go-to counter to deal with Valkyrie and Knight. Play reactively, defend first, and then build a strong push to get the win. In Arena 3, 4 new cards can be found. The best deck for Arena 3 is this Giant Mega Minion deck. Fireball is your most useful card in this deck. It can counter the Barbarians, which are used a lot in this arena. Make sure you always save your Fireball for the Barbarians trying to kill your Giant push. The Mega Minion is a much better choice than regular minions, since it doesn't die from the spells. Other than that, the Goblin Cage still remains the best building to counter cards like Battle Ram. In Arena 4, you finally get access to the Wizard and Inferno Tower. The best deck for Arena 4 features both these cards. The Wizard is great to counter the Skeleton Dragons and Swarms, but the MVP of this deck is the Inferno Tower, which is really hard to counter in this arena. Since there are no good reset cards till Arena 4, that means the Inferno Tower can easily melt your Giant pushes. Therefore, Giant becomes irrelevant in this arena, and instead, you should try to use the Battle Ram as your win condition. Minions in this deck can help distract the Inferno Tower, ensuring that your Battle Ram can get a connection. Things start to get interesting in Arena 5 as you unlock the Hog Rider. The best deck for Arena 5 is the Hog Cycle deck. The Hog Rider is better than the Giant in every aspect. It's faster, deals more damage, and has a ton of HP. Another important card in this deck is the Zap. This small spell is incredibly useful to reset Inferno Towers. It can also take care of swarms instantly, thus allowing your Hog Rider to get damage. Since your opponent might also be running a Hog Rider, the Bomb Tower is a great defensive building to have. Musketeer pairs better with the Hog Rider than the Wizard, as she allows for a faster card cycle along with Skeletons and Electro Spirit. In Arena 6, the P.E.K.K.A. and Skeleton Army are present, and you can rest assured that you will face them in almost every match. Therefore, I'd suggest using this speed deck for Arena 6. This is a spell bait deck, but the Hog Rider makes it even stronger. The Inferno Tower will defend against the P.E.K.K.A., so the opponent is most likely gonna zap it. That's when you drop your Skeleton Army to counter the P.E.K.K.A. Dealing with a Hog Rider plus Goblin Barrel can be really frustrating to your opponent if they don't have the right cards in cycle. Your job is to bait out the opponent's small spells using Skeleton Army and Fire Spirit. Then, you pressure with a Goblin Barrel and your opponent won't have any answer to it really. Keep your zap spell ready always while playing the Hog Rider, since you need to instantly drop it to counter the Skeleton Army. The Musketeer is great for defense against P.E.K.K.A. and Baby Dragons, so make sure to protect her at all costs. In Arena 7, a majority of offensive cards dominate, therefore you need to level up your defense. I'd suggest you use this best deck for Arena 7 since it works perfectly against the other popular decks. This trifecta deck has 3 main units: Hog Rider, Valkyrie, and Musketeer. Hog Rider will be your reliable win condition as always. The Valkyrie is a really important card to use in this deck since it counters the Royal Hogs and Royal Recruits, which are highly popular cards in this arena. If you have an an evolution slot unlocked by now, I'd advise to use the evolved Musketeer. The Musketeer and Inferno Tower are necessary to deal with the P.E.K.K.A., Balloon or Royal Giant pushes. The two princes are also unlocked in this arena. Cards like Valkyrie and Guards help counter them. Fireball is perhaps the most important card of this arena. Cards like Three Musketeers and Royal Hogs are weak against Fireball, making it a must-have in your deck. You unlock a lot of cool cards in Arena 8, and there is no better deck for Arena 8 than the classic 2.6 Hog Cycle with Zap. The Ice Golem and Ice Spirit complement the Hog Rider playstyle really well. You can use the Ice Golem to kite your opponent's troops to the other lane, while your Musketeer or Cannon knocks them out. The super fast cycle with Ice Spirits and Skeletons allows you to spam Hog Riders before your opponent can even get back to their counters. Consistent Hog Rider pushes make it almost impossible for the opponent to defend. Here's an important tip. Lightning is quite popular in this arena, so space out your Musketeer and Cannon so that it doesn't hit both of them. Since you don't have much air defense, try to protect your Musketeer always and quickly get back to another if your opponent counters the first one. Don't be afraid to cycle fireballs on the enemy towers in double and triple elixir if they are low on hit points. If you play this deck well, you can basically defend everything. In Arena 9, it's all about spam cards. I would advise to continue using the same Hog Cycle deck as Arena 8, but with arrows instead of Zap. But if you're looking for a new deck to try out, here's a really good one. So the best deck for Arena 9 is none other than this bait deck. This super fast Goblin Barrel Cycle deck is really annoying for the opponent to deal with. Valkyrie is great against all types of cards in this arena. Fireball and arrows will protect you against any kind of swarm pushes, while Inferno Tower will take care of any tanks coming your way. But the card that will win you games is the Dart Goblin. It moves and attacks so fast that your opponent might not even be able to counter it in time. In fact, it's so annoying that it's bound to bait out a spell like arrows from your opponent, allowing you to go all in with a Goblin Barrel. A great play is to go with the Ice Spirit plus Goblin Barrel once you have baited out the spells. Since your opponent can't use their spells on all your swarm cards, they will always be on the back foot. In Arena 10, a lot of defensive cards can be found. Therefore, the best deck for Arena 10 is this Recruits Royal Hogs Fireball Bait deck. Of course, you can continue playing Hog Cycle or Spell Bait if you want, but if you're looking for an easier deck to play, this is actually perfect for you. This deck relies on baiting out the opponent's Fireball by using annoying cards like Zappies and Flying Machine. Both those cards provide great value on defense. Unless your opponent drops a Fireball on either of them, they're not getting a scratch on your tower. And guess what? Once the Fireball is out of cycle, you go all in with your Royal Hogs. In double elixir, a split lane push with Royal Recruits and Royal Hogs is basically gonna win you the game most of the time. The Goblin Cage makes your defense much easier, and of course you have the Fireball and Flying Machine to snipe your opponent's defenses. While playing Royal Hogs, don't drop them in the same lane if your opponent has a high splash damage dealing card like Valkyrie or Dark Prince. Instead, split them from the bridge, which will force your opponent to overcommit elixir on defense. In Arena 11, you unlock a ton of legendary cards. The best one of them is the Miner. Therefore, it makes perfect sense that the best deck for Arena 11 is this Miner Balloon Cycle deck. This is a very fast-paced deck, which relies on the cycling miners and balloons as quickly as possible. The miner can distract the tower, while the balloon comes from behind to deal damage. You have to keep the snowball handy to knock back anything trying to counter your balloon. Alternatively, you can go for an Ice Golem plus balloon push as well. Here, you deploy your miner to take down the opponent's defensive troops like Musketeer or Wizard. Since you don't have a big spell in this deck, your defense needs to be really strong. Space out your Musketeer and Bomber to defend pushes effectively, and use your log and snowball to clear out any swarms. You need to be the one dictating the pace of the match, and you do that by pressuring your opponent constantly. In Arena 12, you get access to the annoying Firecracker and Earthquake. This marks a perfect opportunity to use the Hog Earthquake Cycle deck, which is the best deck for Arena 12. The deck is extremely free to play, which makes it easy for you to upgrade your cards fast. Firecracker is the key component of this deck. Your job is to keep her on the field as long as possible. Protect her using the Knight and Skeletons. When you drop a Hog Rider, your opponent will most likely play something to defend it. That's your chance to use your Firecracker on the bridge to line up burst shots on the tower. This play is especially effective if your opponent is running arrows, which counters the Firecracker. They don't expect this bridge play, and therefore you get a lot of damage. The Firecracker is incredible on defense too, since she recoils back after every attack. Combine her with a Knight and Tesla, and you've got the perfect defense. In Arena 13, you unlock some really unique cards, including the Lava Hound. So, for the best deck for Arena 13, we have this Lava Loon deck. Lava Loon decks rely on building massive pushes behind the Lava Hound. Most of the time, these pushes are really hard to defend, resulting in an easy win. Start with the Lava Hound in the back and place your balloon behind it once the Hound reaches the bridge. Use Skeleton Dragons and Fireball to clear out any defensive units. For your own defense, I'd suggest keeping it really light since Lava Loon focuses mainly on offense. You have the Tombstone and Mega Minion, which can defend most pushes. Skeleton Dragons are really underrated on defense as well. They can easily defend against most cards and survive for a counter push. While playing Lava Loon, try not to defend everything and focus on creating game-winning pushes. In Arena 14, the annoying Elixir Golem and the Goblin Drill can be found. To counter these, the best deck for Arena 14 is this super fast Logbait deck. This deck has the Bomb Tower and Princess, both of which are great against Elixir Golem. The Dart Goblin shines on both defense and offense. I'd recommend using the Goblin Barrel and Dart Goblin Evolutions if you have them unlocked. The deck works normally like all spell bait decks. You use cards like Skeleton Barrel and Princess to bait out spells of the opponent and then hit them with a Goblin Barrel. Dropping a Princess on the bridge is a great way to make your opponent frustrated since it's near impossible to stop. Don't drop the Princess and Dart Goblin in the same lane since your opponent can get spell value. Use their range to your advantage and space them out. Keep in mind that this deck doesn't have a big spell, so make sure that you're accurate with your defense while maintaining constant pressure on offense. Try to level up your Goblin Barrel before anything else since it's your main source of damage. As you reach Arena 15, you will have unlocked almost every card except Champions. The best deck for Arena 15 is this Graveyard deck, perhaps the most consistent deck in the game. It relies on defending the opponent's cards and then building a strong counter push. You need to be really patient while playing the Graveyard. The Ice Wizard plus Tornado combo is the best defensive combo in the game. Use your Tornado to activate your King Tower whenever you can. Never use your Graveyard without a tank. You always need a mini tank card like Knight or Baby Dragon to cross the bridge before using your Graveyard. Poison the enemy troops trying to defend the Graveyard. This way, you'll be guaranteed damage every time. Don't overcommit though. Bonus tip, the Mother Witch is also unlocked in Arena 15. Since she's a great counter to the Graveyard, you need to be careful playing against her. Defend throughout the game and wait until triple elixir to play your Graveyard. This way, you can poison the Mother Witch and her piggies as well. In Arena 16, you finally get access to the first two champions, the Golden Knight and Skeleton King. The best deck for Arena 16 is this Graveyard deck using the Skeleton King. The Skeleton King pairs really well with the Graveyard since he collects all the fallen souls every time your opponent counters the Graveyard. This way, you have another walking graveyard already. Phoenix is a really good card to use in this deck. It's spell resistant and will provide you with immense value on both offense and defense. As you get to Arena 17, the Archer Queen and Mighty Miner come into play. The best deck for Arena 17 is this giant skeleton hog cycle with Archer Queen. This is one of my personal favorite decks, and it does really well against mid-ladder cards. The giant skeleton deals against those annoying Mega Knights and Golem pushers. Archer Queen is a valuable asset to this deck. Use her ability at the right time, and she will wipe out hordes of troops by herself. Cycle Hogs and Earthquakes to get consistent damage on the towers. In Arena 18, you unlock the Goblinstein, Little Prince, and Monk. For the best deck for Arena 18, we have this Splash Yard deck with a Goblinstein. It's my personal favorite deck to use in the game, and the one I'd recommend you guys to upgrade. The Goblinstein's ability is so strong that it can just obliterate any kind of push coming your way. Combine that with the defensive combo of Ice Wizard and Tornado, and your opponent is in for a rough time. Use your tornadoes effectively to get the maximum value from the Goblinstein's ability. You can basically beat anything in the game if you master this deck. After Arena 18, you don't unlock any new cards, but pros suggest these next 5 particular decks to use till Arena 23. The reason? Because even though there aren't any new cards in these arenas, the skill level of the players differ widely. You need to adapt, else it'll be hard for you to reach 9,000 trophies. The best deck for Arena 19 is Lava Loon. When played right, Lava Loon pushes are incredibly hard to defend. Inferno Dragon is your tank killer, while Evolved Valkyrie and Guards can defend any ground card. Build a strong Lava Loon push and support it with Skeleton Dragons and Fireball. Quick tip: using your Skeleton Dragons to push your balloon to the side is a great way to ensure a balloon hit, since it won't be pulled by the buildings placed in the middle. The best deck for Arena 20 is this Royal Giant Cycle deck. It has been one of the most consistent decks in the last 5 years. Drop your Royal Giant for offense and utilize the Fisherman to pull any troops trying to attack him. If your opponent has any building, straight away lightning it. The Fisherman is the most important card in this deck, since he can also be used to activate your King Towers. The Royal Ghost can be utilized to apply pressure and always force out a response from your opponent. Bonus tip: in double and triple elixir, start by dropping the Royal Giant in the back and cycle to another one while the first reaches the bridge. That way, you'll always have 2 big Royal Giant pushes, and your opponent will eventually crumble under the pressure. As the best deck for Arena 21, I'd recommend using this Minor Wall Breakers Cycle deck. It's a really solid deck, with tools for both offense and defense. Split your Wall Breakers to force your opponent to overcommit Elixir. Magic Archer is the real game changer of this deck. Always try to get Magic Archer shots on the tower by lining him up perfectly at the bridge. Keep cycling Miners for chip damage. Use the Goblinstein's ability and Bomb Tower for easy defense. Pro tip: use your Magic Archers when your opponent least expects him. For example, if you see a knight coming down, don't drop the Magic Archer early. Wait for him to come near the bridge, and then drop your Magic Archer. Use the Tornado to pull the knight back in a straight line, allowing multiple Magic Archer shots. Most players will never expect this play. Remember to only use this play to either finish the game or in double or triple elixir. The best deck for Arena 22 is none other than the classic Logbait, a deck that never dies. Players around this trophy range hate playing against Logbait. The single most important tip for this match is to cycle back to your evolved Goblin Barrel as quickly as possible. Mid-ladder players always fail to catch the barrels, so keep switching your Goblin Barrel placements. Princess at Bridge and Rocket Cycle will make players hate you, but will definitely win you games. And finally, as the best deck for Arena 23, we have this Royal Hogs Earthquake Cycle deck, perhaps the best Clash Royale deck of the last 5 years. This deck has basically no counters if played right. Must know tip: in double and triple elixir, drop the Archer Queen in the back and utilize the 3-card cycle to spam Royal Hogs and Earthquake on the opponent's towers. While all these mentioned decks work great, I'd suggest that you stick with one good deck and keep upgrading it. Master that deck and you will reach 9,000 trophies in no time. But if you have trouble building your own deck, then worry not. Watch this video to learn how to build your own best deck in Clash Royale.